It is my honor to announce our next speaker. Our next speaker is our own chair, Isak van der Walt. He is currently the Digital Scholarship and Innovation Manager for the Department of Library Services at the University of Pretoria. He oversees the Digital Services and Systems Unit, which comprises of digital scholarship, information technology, digitization, and the library maker space. His main focus is the implementation of projects that are of strategic value and importance to University of Pretoria and library services. Isak has been a member of the University of Pretoria since 1999, where his career has been focused primarily on ICT and information services. He has got over 20 years of experience in the academic ICT sector. He has an in-depth knowledge of the latest trends, demands, solutions to steer academic librarianship into the 21st century. He is also a seasoned conference speaker, having presented at over 60 conferences and workshops on a national and international level. He's a co-founder and a project lead of the first academic makerspace in South Africa, and is responsible for the strategic planning and trajectory of the makerspace. He's also responsible for the implementation of the first robot librarian called Libby in Africa. Currently, Isak is in the process of implementing a digital scholarship center at the University of Pretoria, enabling this new form of scholarly output and discovery to researchers and students. He's also part of the Research Data Management Steering Committee, advising on the technical aspects relating to RDM. In addition, Isak is also the technical lead for the South African Sustainable Development Hub, steering their artificial intelligence projects to enhance research discovery. He's a passionate digital strategist with a love for all new disruptive technologies and services that change the very way we are doing things. We see him as one of our own because he's been with us as Derisa. So it is my pleasure to welcome you, Isak. Over to you.
Thank you, Stembi. So I'll need to write a shorter bio or get a shorter bio. All right, thank you very much. Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today's topic is not heavily scientific, but the topic today might relate to a lot of your disciplines. I need to hold myself to the same standard as chair, so I'm timing myself right. So I'm going to talk about the future of libraries in an age dominated by automation and artificial intelligence. And the reason why I'm choosing this topic is libraries are the custodians of information for academic institutions. We host the data sets, we host the research outputs, and so on. So we are responsible as well for what we put in, and you heard somewhere here, garbage in, garbage out. But more recently, there's a new growing trend going around. So a lot of people here are using artificial intelligence, using machine learning as part of the research process or research outputs or analysis. And we need to look into why. Right, so one of the big things at the moment is, you start seeing more of these trends. This is a fake interview that was done with Vladimir Putin to demonstrate how convincing deepfakes could be in real time and just in a matter of years. Now, this was in 2019, so we're quite aware of how fast deepfakes have grown and how more popular they've become. I just want to show you this brief video. I'm not going to watch it in full. Please, at your convenience.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time.
Jordan Peele created this fake video of President Obama to demonstrate how easy it is to put words in someone else's mouth.
Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet.
Not everyone bought it, but the technology behind such frauds is rapidly improving, even as worries increase about their potential for harm.
Okay, so I'm not going to play that video. Please go and watch it in full if you want to. Besides that, just in media, things about Putin, I'm starting to see more of these headlines where fake science is creating a real crisis and AI is making it more difficult and worse to detect. The links are also there to the different articles. Right, so it's becoming much more prevalent in research where data is being faked. And we'll get to where and how and who's responsible a bit later. But look at this scary research article. It's published by Nature, which is this extract. 8% of research in a Dutch survey have falsified or fabricated data. Right? This is a study of 7,000 researchers. So 8% of that is quite large. So if you have to take a stab, yesterday's full auditorium, imagine 8% of those research in that auditorium, someone faked their research or fabricated their data. So it's quite real in terms of that, right? So, and we'll get to a little bit more in detail about that. And it's an ongoing battle. It doesn't stop, right? So this article shows about, deep fakes and how it's being detected and how you can use AI as well to detect fakes. But this one specifically shows when deep fakes just started out, it was easy to detect if it's a video that's generated with deep fake. They noticed, obviously, they don't include people using or wearing glasses or have beards. And they also detected that the blinking pattern is not the same as a natural human, right? So they wrote software to detect it. Within a few months, it's been circumvented, and there's a new release of it. And they bypassed the whole system in terms of detection, right? So, but it's not all bad. We're going to get to that in a bit. Here's another one in terms of AI-generated images that can make it almost impossible to detect deep fakes. So those of you in the know of how these networks work, they continuously improve up to the point where it's almost impossible to detect the data. Now, the big problem is when a researcher uses this in their research is if it's not detected, that paper or that data set gets published and other researchers use the same data and the same data. So subsequent papers or data sets that are being generated from that are based on falsified or fabricated information, right? This is a very nice paper that was published in Science Direct on deepfakes, a new threat to image fabrication. So this was just the use of deepfakes to generate esophageal cancer cells there on the right-hand bottom corner there, and how the researchers managed to generate this and basically avoid detection or show how easy it is to avoid detection. Now, in some cases, it's beneficial to use networks like this because you don't always just get esophageal cancer slices of cells that you can use in a lab. So having to generate it does have a purpose. The issue comes in when a researcher doesn't specify or state upfront what they are using and making the data out as their own that they created themselves. Right. Lastly, this is why I'm showing a lot of stuff and why worry. Right, so a total of 436 papers in 2 Spring and Nature journals are being subjected to expressions of concern. And the statement from Alison Mitchell, the Chief Journals Officer at Springer Nature, said, these subversion efforts are becoming increasingly sophisticated and now increasingly involve the use of artificial intelligence technologies. Right, so that's a lot of papers that have a notice of concern on them. This is a very nice website as well that you can go to. It's the AI Incident Database that lists incidents where people have been, they've experienced bias or they've experienced harm in some form due to the use of artificial intelligence. And that database is also growing. What I've highlighted there in yellow for us is just the academic institutions where it has been used in some form or manner where someone has been disadvantaged because of it. And also a lot of times with bias built into this. Right, so, but it's not all bad. As I mentioned earlier, deep fakes can be used for good. Right, the fake part always just annoys me a bit, but nonetheless, it can be used for good. The good example is the esophageal cancer cells that I just shown you. You can generate images. So if something's very scarce or rare, you can actually generate more images based on that to complete your research. Again, it becomes an ethical thing when you do not state your methods. One of the previous presenters spoke about the data management plan. So if you, as an example, in your data management plan, state up front what methods you are going to use to generate your data, and you also state that in full, then it's not a problem. It's when you don't do it when it becomes a bit of a problem. All right. So who's responsible when it comes to this? Everyone, essentially. All right. But no one wants to take responsibility for it. And it's difficult to determine the point of origin. Right. So there's an example that I've seen where a paper was retracted because the lead researcher submitted images that was generated by a research assistant. The research assistant used deepfakes to generate images, and the researcher had no idea. Right, so it's quite difficult to determine. And you can also use other sets that have been generated or fabricated, and you have no idea where it started off. So it's essentially a joint effort by the whole organization. And I'm going to show you what we're starting to do at the University of Pretoria with regards to that. Right, but there's multiple reasons why people want to fabricate and fake their research data. The article link is in it, so if you do have the presentation, you can go to that. But primarily it's career and funding pressures, right? So you have a specific deadline, or you have to present a paper at a specific time or generate something. Institutional failures of oversight, commercial conflicts of interest, inadequate training, erosion of standards of mentoring. If my research supervisor is doing it, I can do it. No one's being kept, no one was caught out doing this, all right? So very real scenarios there, and part of a larger pattern of societal defiance. So if it's not frowned upon in South Africa or Singapore or wherever, it doesn't bother anybody. Okay, so what can we do? So I'm looking at it from a academic library perspective in terms of what role we can play, but it's also applicable to everybody else. So obviously awareness creation, as what we're doing right now, plays a very big part. And if you start integrating it into curriculum, and people are made aware of it from, an early stage in their academic careers, it's very relevant and useful for them. So the articles here are some examples of training curriculums and stuff that have been done. So developing student skills of identifying reliable scientific resources, how to avoid fake information, and it becomes more of an ethical thing. Then there are also methods where institutions create their own software to detect deep fakes. As I mentioned earlier, the tricky part here is if you're doing it right now, within a month or 2 months' time, there might be a new version out to circumvent your detection methods, which might be a bit tricky. All right. This is on a national level. This is DARPA's method of launching new programs to detect falsified media. So it's on a national level. It's a $68 million project that they launched. And there's another article about this where they are struggling actually to keep up with how fast the methods are being presented. Right, so what can we do again from library side? We can play a crucial role in by enabling or creating awareness creation on best practices to falsify information. Foundational training on information research ethics, create training programs internal, our own staff, our students and our researchers, student awareness and best practices, academic staff awareness, assist with the identification of fake and falsified resources. So having a look at our own resources that we make available to the academic community. So are they trustworthy resources that we have? Engage with institutional stakeholders. So this would mean the research office, your information technology office, teaching and learning, and play a more integral part in information and data resource acquisition. So what are we getting? Are we getting access to our institutions from reputable journals, reputable data subscriptions and so forth, and data sets? So again, very relevant. All right, so just in brief, plagiarism, everybody probably, I hope, knows what plagiarism is in this room. All right, it's appropriation of another person's ideas. Falsification means the manipulation of research material, equipment, or processes, and then fabrication refers to the making of data results or recordings. Okay. Another article that actually focuses it in terms of research integrity, what we can do. And basically the conclusion of this research article says removing improper incentives, training researchers and imposing better governance are vital to reducing research misconduct. Right, so it boils down more to a human element, and which you can govern in terms of policies and training and awareness creation than actual technology in itself. Right, so from the University of Pretoria perspective, when we presented this to the DVC of Research, we came up with an academic integrity series to start the awareness creation campaign, not just on using artificial intelligence for research or faking research, right? But a whole series that we wrote articles on, creating awareness with our research and academic staff. And the articles are the plagiarism prevention at UP, how, what, why, where, referencing tools, again, similar, where to publish deepfakes, proprietary journals, fake news, and then open access publishing at UP as part of our awareness campaign to our research community. These are just some of the examples in terms of what we can do or what we are doing at the university. So this one was plagiarism, and this one was one about the deepfakes at the institution as well. So as a library, we don't have the coding skills as an example to say, right, for detecting potato diseases, this is what we're going to do in terms of detecting how someone is creating fake images. We don't have the skills nor the resources and the capacity to do that because we're sitting with quite a large field of disciplines at the institution. But this is the least that we can do. We obviously have policies at the university governing ethical research and those elements, which are quite crucial, but it starts sort of in terms of the individual in themselves to be able to do and conduct themselves ethically when they do their research. Right, so what does the future hold? Obviously more advanced methods to circumvent detection. So again, it's a cat and mouse game, it's continuously evolving. All right, and a united institutional stand against ethical research, including our resources, our methods and processes, our training programs, and our verification processes. All right, so looking into what we can do with that. And then our own future will hold the use of these systems to detect it. All right, so will we be able to write these tools and sustain these tools to write it? We're not entirely sure on all of that. All right, so with that, I'm going to finish my session and then open up questions and answers for all three. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Isak, thank you so much for enlightening us on the ethics that we need to do as researchers to make sure that everything that we do is above par, and also making sure that we follow the processes that we have to. But thank you so much for sharing the information. This is a token of appreciation. Thank you so much. A round of applause for Isak. I think it would be fair for me to continue to handle the question and answer session since he's conflicted in the presentation as well. So are there any questions? I note three. This order, we'll start with Kasim, and then we'll go to Jeremy, and then the gentleman there.
Thank you. I was going to ask three questions to Mary, to Isak, but I'm not going to ask those two questions. I'm going to give advice to this young lady here. I think you said she was a PhD student, are you? Yeah. I looked at the methods you did, and I want to suggest the best way forward, because I think you mentioned that you are predicting which animals are likely to be killed. Is that what you said? What? Right, okay. What are the predictions for?
I'm just predicting roadkill, but I'm just assessing which algorithm would be the best to use predictions in case people want to
Okay,
use
so what I'm
predictions
suggesting is that you think of the predictors of the accidents, because those are the ones which decision makers will be able to use to improve, to reduce the number of accidents in Mpumalanga. You've got a data set that was collected, you said, from 2011 to 2012, for 1 year, I think you've got. And so I think you want to focus on the predictors of the accidents rather than, comparative analysis of the algorithms, because that's what will make contribution to knowledge. That's the...
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kasim, for that comment. We really appreciate. Can we hear the next question? Who are you addressing it to? And maybe your name and surname so that we know.
All right, sure. I'm Jeremy Main from Soraya. I actually had a question for each of the speakers, but maybe I'm going to start with Mary Jane. And thanks and congratulations on your appointment as MD. It's been wonderful to have been part of your life through the HPC community and see everyone moving up. So it's wonderful. But I wanted to ask, the SION seems to focus on terrestrial observations. What is the role of Earth, space-based Earth observations in terms of the mandate of SION in relation to SANSA? That was my question. And then I had one for Isak as well.
Thanks, Jeremy, and well, thanks for the congratulatory remarks. Yeah, so yes, at SION we are focusing more on the in situ observations, and that is precisely because SANSA has a mandate on the Earth observations. So we have engaged with SANSA, and for example, if you look at the question of sensor development, the observations right now with all our sensors are coming, from Europe or from the US, and we are thinking, about the local development of sensors, and we are talking to SANSA around that to say if we are to develop these, we will work with them while they focus on observations from space, while we look at observations from the ground, and then we'll be able to work together to say, suppose you wanted to develop a satellite product, then you can use the in situ observations to do the calibration. But that in itself does not say we are not using satellite information. We do have scientists, for example, in the Fynbos node, we've got Glenn Moncrief, who's focusing on the use of satellite information, to look at vegetation types. So in the end, like, you can't just use one particular, data set, especially if you want to look at a big area. So we do use satellite information, but in the end, we are not trying to compete with SANSA. We think we are mostly the in situ people, while SANSA then can assist on the space side.
Thanks very much. I had a question for Isak, but in the interest of time, I can let that move on. Quick one. All right.
Yes,
perfect.
you can go.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating topic, and the world right now is faced with these alternative realities which have been generated by information and knowledge which we see in the media. And I hadn't appreciated, of course, it's in the library systems as well. But it's nominally looks like a problem that started in the digital age. But then when you think about it, it's been going on since before then. Is there a way to backport the methods to start looking at what was created in our sort of known knowledge that was back then considered deep fake? I'm particularly thinking about the influence in the medical industry, some of the sort of interests of big companies back in the late 40s and 50s and the outcome of results. Just what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I fully agree as well. It's nothing new to fabricate data or to falsify data. And if you go to a website like Retraction Watch, which is one of my favorite things to do is follow, there are internet sleuths that kind of look at certain articles which they have questioned. But I don't think there's a systematic process where if you look at the volume, let's say the University of Pretoria's research outputs, I don't think there's enough resources to look at each individual discipline and the methods on how it was used. But the research community does pick up where they believe something has been falsified. The tricky part and the sad part is research data management has only become sort of on the forefront in South Africa, let's say around, I think it was 2014, 2013, where you have to log your data, store your data in specific manners and so forth. So prior to that, the data is lost, and the method's lost. So it does happen, but at a much slower pace. It's more like an individual, this researcher has been known to falsify data, let's question his research. But I think if we had to go retrospectively at the University of Pretoria's research outputs it would be an enormous task just to get hold of that data and that research and the methods and the software that was used in that time and era. So, yeah.
Thank you. Our last question for the session.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. My question is for Irene. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. You mentioned that you did some data resampling, so I just want to know what methods did you use, and
Come again.
okay, thanks. I see that you mentioned that you did some data resampling, so I just want to know what methods did you use, and the other thing is that what was like the motivation behind the choice of your loss functions.
You want to know how I selected the data? Just to...
Like you mentioned that you did a resample, like to increase the number of your data set. So I'm interested in the method that you used.
Resampling the data. So the reason we resampled or I resampled the data is just to visualize it as a daily data. So what happened was in the original data, for example, you find a 1 month, maybe they have collected data for only 1 week. Then you go to another month or in the certain season, they may be collected for 2 weeks. So we just wanted to have that systematic. And for the days that the data was not collected, we just filled it with the 0 for those days, which means that there were no entries captured in the data set. That's how it was resampled. Yes.
Thanks. And then what about the loss functions?
Majorly, these kind of models do actually exist. The ones that are adapted, Sarmax only model actually do exist, and LSTM model is for deep neural networks. In case you want to do deep learning, it's a model that's just adapted to be able to use. And we selected for LSTM, we used like Adam optimizers and etc. to be able to minimize. Adam is known for being more robust when you're trying to minimize the error. For us, it worked for us well. Although because the data was very small, we also used the cross validation that helped actually to have those results because of the cross validation. Otherwise, the other options didn't work that quite well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you to the presenters. We really appreciate your time and effort. We are now going to take a short break. Our next and last session for the day will resume at 15:25, 3 in this very room. Thank you to all of you for your participation. Maybe a round of applause to our presenters. Thank you so much.